The lavender towel didn't belong to us. It was neatly folded on the edge of the table, hotel quality, perfectly rolled, still faintly damp. That would have meant nothing if I hadn't spent the past 11 years knowing every damn towel in this house. The frayed one we used for the dog, the red-stained one from when I dropped marinara on it, and the 3 mismatched bath towels we got from a wedding registry we never finished. But this towel? It had no history here. And somehow, it smelled exactly like her when she walked through the door that night, glowing, barefoot, humming like she was coming back from a dream instead of a spa day with Becca and Jules. I didn't say anything right away. I watched her glide into the kitchen, radiant and pink-cheeked, carrying a paper bag with eucalyptus bath salts she'd never used before. Her eyes darted toward the table the moment she noticed the lavender roll resting next to the salt shaker. And that's when she froze. Mid-step, like a deer spotting a rifle glint in the brush. She didn't ask where the towel came from. She didn't touch it. She just whispered, "Why is that here?" And I smiled, because that was exactly the question I wanted her to ask. Everything after that wasn't about the towel anymore. It was about the man who left it behind. I didn't answer her right away. I just leaned against the counter and watched her try to piece it all together. Haley wasn't the kind of woman who stammered or blinked too much when caught off guard. She'd been in enough boardrooms and bad breakups to master the art of composure. But right then, her poker face cracked. She stepped closer to the towel like it might hiss at her. I could see the mental math behind her eyes. It was the same towel, the same scent, the same hotel logo stitched subtly into the corner. She knew where it was from. And she knew I couldn't possibly know that, not unless I'd followed a thread she thought she'd clipped clean. When she reached out, I stopped her. "Don't touch it," I said. That's exactly how he left it. Haley's lips parted slightly, like she wanted to deny it, or at least shape a lie convincing enough to buy her time. But her words didn't come. She just stared at me like I'd become someone she didn't recognize. And maybe, in that moment, I had. I told her to sit down. She didn't. So I walked over to the drawer, pulled out a manila folder, and slid it across the table. Inside were 3 things: a printed hotel receipt from a boutique place in Burlington, booked for 2, not 1. A photo taken from the hallway cam, showing her wrapped in a white robe with her hand around a man's back. And a second photo, this one much blurrier, of him kissing her neck near the elevators. She didn't even open the folder. Her knees buckled, and she gripped the edge of the table with both hands, head low, breathing hard. I could hear her heartbeat in her silence. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I was just there. Quiet, calm, like a guy watching his house burn from the porch with a glass of water in his hand, knowing full well it wouldn't help. Finally, she muttered something. I didn't mean for it to go that far. That sentence was like an electric shock. That far. That far as in what? A kiss? A room? A weekend? A plan? I asked her one question. How long? Her answer wasn't immediate. She looked at the towel again. That ridiculous lavender towel, like it had the right to sit on our table, like it had lived here longer than I had. Finally, she whispered, 3 months. 3 months. That's a quarter of a year. A season. 13 weekends. 90 lies. And I could feel something inside me, something I'd been avoiding for a long time settling. Not anger. Not despair. Just the cold, clear stillness of knowing. I'd suspected. I'd made excuses. But now the guessing game was over, and the rules had changed. Haley finally sat down. She looked smaller now, stripped of her practiced glow, her spa day illusion crumbling like ash. And I sat too. Not across from her, but beside her close enough that she couldn't escape it, couldn't pretend this was still a misunderstanding or a rough patch. You didn't mean for it to go that far, I repeated. That's what people say when they're surprised. You weren't surprised, Haley. You packed extra makeup. You wore the perfume you said gave you headaches. You booked the same room twice. She didn't argue. That silence was the loudest thing in the room. What she didn't know yet, what would really rattle her, was that I wasn't planning to scream, fight, or even leave. Not yet. Because I needed to know one more thing. Why? And she was going to tell me. Or she was going to find out just how far I could go. Haley stared at the table like the answer might rise up from the wood grain and save her. She kept shifting her eyes toward the folder, toward the towel, then back to me, like she was calculating which version of the truth might hurt her less. But I wasn't interested in versions. I wanted the raw, ugly truth she had buried under eucalyptus steam and silk robes. She swallowed hard. You wouldn't understand. Wrong answer. I leaned in, kept my voice low. Try me. She rubbed her hands together, nervous habit. Used to do it before interviews or when her mother called. It wasn't about him, she said finally. It wasn't even supposed to happen again after the first time. But that pause, that trailing off, that cowardly ellipsis. But what? I asked. You got bored? Lonely? Or was it that you liked who you were around him more than who you were around me? Her eyes flinched, like I'd hit the nerve dead on. She didn't answer that. Instead, she reached for the towel, not to touch it, but to push it further down the table like it was taunting her. It started the night you canceled your trip, she said. Remember? You were supposed to go to that acoustic expo in Albany. I nodded. I remembered. I canceled because of the snowstorm, got stuck in town. Thought she'd be glad to have an unexpected weekend together. Apparently, she wasn't. I had already planned to meet him that weekend, she admitted. It was supposed to be just dinner. Talk. Vent. But when you didn't leave, she stopped, looked ashamed. I lied. I said Becca needed me. And I went anyway. That weekend, I remembered, she came back late. Claimed she was helping Becca sort through some apartment drama. I even made her tea that night. I had no idea I was helping her recover from someone else's touch. Who is he? I asked. She hesitated. His name's Kellen. He works at the same agency. We met during a brand retreat back in January. Kellen. The guy she swore was annoying. I remembered that name in passing. He's harmless, she once said when I asked why he kept commenting on her Instagram stories at 1 a.m. I asked her the part that had been festering in my chest for days. Do you love him? Her face twisted. No. God, no. It wasn't about that. Then came the part that hit harder than any admission of love would have. I just didn't feel like myself anymore. With you, I mean. I felt invisible. You got comfortable. Everything was routine, predictable. I felt like wallpaper in this house. That was it. That was the rot in the foundation. She didn't cheat because she was tempted by love or even lust. She did it because she didn't feel seen. Like I'd become furniture in her world. Reliable, sturdy, always there, and always ignored. You know what's funny? I said quietly. I felt the same. For years. Haley's eyes widened a bit. But I wasn't offering her an olive branch. I wasn't trying to bond over shared disappointment. I was laying the groundwork for something else. I stood up, walked toward the cabinet, and opened the drawer where we kept the home camera hard drive. I held it up and placed it next to the folder. There's footage, I said. From the day you left for your little spa getaway. The car that picked you up wasn't a rideshare. She blinked. Kellen drives a Dodge, right? Gray, dent on the rear fender. She didn't respond. But her silence was enough. Her fingers curled into fists. You lied straight to my face, Haley, I said. And not just about one night. You built an entire alternate reality. You planned weekends, made fake texts from friends, left candles burning to smell like spas. You came home smelling like another man and dared to kiss me with it still on your skin. Her lip quivered. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Don't worry, I said, stepping away. I'm not going to throw your clothes out. I'm not going to scream at you in a parking lot or post your pictures online. She looked surprised. I leaned against the wall, crossed my arms. No, Haley. I'm going to do something worse. She stared at me, waiting. Her voice barely a whisper. What could be worse? I smiled. You'll see. Because I'd already started. And she had no idea what was waiting for her tomorrow. The next morning, I didn't wake her. She'd fallen asleep on the couch, fully clothed, wrapped in the same blanket we used to share on winter movie nights. Her makeup had streaked down one cheek, and she'd been clutching her phone like it might offer her a way out. But I'd already disabled her fingerprint access to my accounts, changed the Wi-Fi password, and rerouted all our joint banking alerts to my private email. She didn't know it yet, but her safety net was gone. This was going to be slow, not explosive. Methodical. And I wasn't going to lift a finger in anger. Just pressure. Just truth. I brewed my usual coffee, sat at the counter, and waited for her to stir. When she finally sat up, rubbing her eyes like a hungover stranger in her own life, I didn't speak first. I just pushed an envelope toward her. What's this? She mumbled. Open it. Inside were 2 receipts. One from the spa she claimed to visit, but I had called them yesterday. She had no appointment, no record of ever booking with them. The second receipt was from the boutique hotel in Burlington. Same weekend. Same room she'd visited with Kellen twice before. She didn't even try to fake confusion this time. I don't have the words, she said quietly. That's fine, I replied. I'm done listening to words anyway. I stood and walked into the garage. In the corner was a single black box, taped shut, labeled in bold red marker, SBA Memories. Inside were copies of everything I'd found, digital footprints, printed messages, the entire archive I'd been collecting for the past 3 weeks. That was the truth. I had suspected longer than she thought. But I wasn't planning to use it for revenge. Not in the way she assumed. See, that Saturday she left for her girls' spa day. I already knew she wasn't going where she claimed. I knew because I tested her. I had called Becca, the best friend she always used as cover. Becca, who didn't know anything about any spa trip. Becca, who had recently stopped responding to Haley's messages altogether. Why? Because she had known what was going on and didn't want to be a part of it anymore. Turns out she'd warned Haley once already. Told her to come clean, or she would. Instead, Haley doubled down and dragged her name through more lies. So I made a plan. I booked a full spa day for myself under a different name, at a different spa an hour away. Not to relax. To breathe. To think. To ask myself a hard question. What would hurt her more, screaming or silence? I chose silence. And clarity. While she was with him, I was making copies of her keys. I was logging into the joint investment app and requesting my full withdrawal. I was calling my cousin in Oregon, the one with the spare guest cabin, and asking how long I could stay. I wasn't just watching her betray me. I was preparing to vanish. And now she was sitting across from me, broken in a way I'd never seen before. Her voice was thin. Her shoulders hunched. I want to fix this, she said, reaching across the counter. I didn't move. I don't. She blinked. You don't what? I don't believe you. I don't want to fix it. And I don't think you're sorry. That's when I saw the fear finally register. Not the fear of losing me, but the fear of the unknown. The fear of what I had done quietly behind the scenes. I stood up and grabbed my coat. I'll be back tonight, I said. There's food in the fridge. Don't touch the box on the table. And then I left. Where was I going? To the lawyer. Because Haley wasn't going to lose me all at once. She was going to lose me in chapters. And each one would start with a question she never saw coming. When I got to the attorney's office that afternoon, I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to say. I didn't have rage bubbling under the surface. I wasn't shaking with nerves or emotion. It was like I had passed through that storm already. What remained was something colder, cleaner, a kind of detachment I never imagined I could feel for the woman I once planned to grow old with. The attorney's name was Bernard Klein. Mid-60s, wore a tie clip with his initials, and had the kind of voice that never needed to rise above a murmur. He'd helped me with some zoning issues on a property years ago. I remembered thinking back then, if I ever need to end something permanent, I want a guy like this. And now I was back. We talked through everything. No kids. A house in both our names. 2 joint accounts, a few investments, and an antique canoe we always argued about but neither of us used. Clean cut, he said. No spousal support likely. Not if we did this quietly. That's when I told him my plan. I don't want to serve her with papers, I said. Not yet. I want to build it first. He raised an eyebrow. Build what? The moment. One she won't forget. He leaned back, tapped his pen on the folder in front of him. Just don't let it become revenge. It's not, I said, and I meant it. It's revelation. That night, I returned home just before 7. The lights were on in the kitchen, but the rest of the house was dark. I could tell she'd been crying, the kind that dries into headaches and leaves the skin under your eyes red and tight. But I didn't comfort her. I walked in calmly, placed a new envelope on the table, and sat across from her. She didn't ask what it was. She just opened it. Inside were 2 things, a single sheet of paper and a small photograph. The photo was of her and Kellen, taken from across the street through the hotel window. It wasn't explicit, nothing that violated privacy. But it didn't need to be. His hand was on her lower back. Her head was on his chest. They weren't in bed. They were dancing. Slowly. Intimately. With the kind of affection you don't show someone you only see in secret. She stared at it, her lip trembling. The paper was a letter. Written by me. Not a rage-filled rant. Just a series of statements. I loved you even when you stopped being kind to me. I noticed when you stopped laughing at my jokes. I watched you check out of this marriage 2 years ago. And I kept showing up. Every day. Until I realized I was the only one still showing up. So now I'm not. Not anymore. She folded the letter slowly. Her hands were shaking. I never wanted this, she whispered. I nodded. I know. There was a long silence. Just the hum of the fridge and the faint creak of the heating system. And then she said something that stopped me cold. I was going to end it. With him. I looked at her and said nothing. Not because I got caught. Because I realized I didn't even like who I was with him. I became someone else. Someone worse. It might have mattered 3 weeks ago, maybe even 2. But now, I leaned forward. You think this is about him? It never was. It's about the moment I realized I wasn't even in the conversation anymore. That you were planning life without me while still sleeping in our bed. She covered her mouth. Please don't leave. I stood up. I'm not leaving. A flicker of hope lit her eyes. You are. And I pointed to the guest room, where her suitcase was already waiting, with the key to a temporary rental she could use for the next 2 weeks. Prepaid. Quiet. Dignified. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just broke. Right there at the table. But I didn't touch her. I didn't console her. Because you don't put out a fire by feeding it oxygen. And for the first time in years, I finally felt like I could breathe. She didn't leave right away. Haley sat at the table for almost an hour after I'd gone upstairs. I heard the faint creak of the chair when she finally stood, the soft shuffle of her feet across the hardwood, the zip of the suitcase she hadn't packed but now had no choice but to carry. I heard the front door click open, and then nothing. That silence. It was the cleanest moment I'd felt in that house in years. I didn't follow her. I didn't stand in the window to watch her walk to the car. I just stared at the ceiling, arms crossed over my chest, listening to the furnace hum and wondering how long I'd been living beside someone I didn't really know. I thought back to all the things I'd dismissed, her increasing absences, the late-night texts she shielded from view, the way she laughed at strangers' jokes louder than mine. It was all there, like tiny red flags lining a parade I refused to see. But now the house was mine again. Every corner, every drawer, every echo. I gave it one day before her first message came through. I didn't block her. I wanted to see what she'd say when she no longer had anything to control. It arrived just after noon the next day. Simple. Just one sentence. Can we talk, please? I'm not okay. I didn't answer. Later that evening, another one came. You don't understand how lonely I've been. We were both lost. Don't pretend you weren't. There it was again. That shifting of blame. Not denying what she'd done, just trying to recast it as some kind of mutual drift, like we had both quietly conspired to destroy our own home. By the end of the week, there were 5 more messages. Each one got more emotional. First regret, then guilt, then nostalgia. She started attaching old photos. Us at the lake, us in Asheville, our first Thanksgiving with her awkward cooking. I remember staring at one image of her kissing my cheek while we sat on the hood of my car under the fireworks. For a second, I felt something stir, some remnant of the version of us I used to love. But even then, I knew better. That version didn't exist anymore. What she didn't know was that I'd already told both sets of our parents. I was polite, respectful. I didn't smear her name, but I told them the truth. My parents were quiet, stoic New Englanders who believed in not airing dirty laundry, even when it smelled like gasoline. Her parents were stunned. Her mother cried. Her father said very little, just cleared his throat and asked if I was sure. I was. I had also filed the divorce paperwork. Quietly, without fanfare. I told Bernard I didn't want to drag it out. She could have the car, the dining set, even the antique canoe if she wanted it. But not the house. Not the one she brought strangers back into emotionally, if not physically. That Saturday, I got an unexpected visit. Kellen, in my driveway. I was raking leaves when he pulled up in his gray Dodge, same one from the hotel cam footage. He stepped out like a man with something rehearsed, wearing jeans too tight for sincerity and a guilt-smoothed expression. I didn't say a word. He approached slowly, hands open, like I was a bear he didn't want to spook. I just wanted to say, I didn't mean for things to get this far, he said. There it was again, that same broken record. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Like betrayal was some accidental cliff they all just stumbled over together. I didn't yell. I didn't punch him. I just looked him straight in the eye and asked, do you think she'd still be texting me if you were enough? His mouth opened, then closed. I didn't think so, I said. Now get off my property. And to his credit, he did. No argument. No scene. Just a long, silent walk back to his truck. After he drove away, I stood there in the half-raked leaves, surrounded by the wind and cold air, and I felt something deep inside me shift again. Not grief. Not even relief. Closure. But that wasn't the end. Because Haley wasn't done. And the last thing she did was something I never expected. It had been 12 days since Haley walked out of the house with the suitcase I packed for her. Since then, her messages had slowed. No more long, emotional paragraphs. No more voice notes where she cried softly into the mic, hoping I'd respond. Just the occasional ping, thinking of you. Or, I miss the smell of home. I never replied. Not once. Not because I hated her, but because I finally understood what silence can protect. But on the 13th day, I heard her car pull up. I looked out the window and saw her stepping out, wearing an old hoodie of mine she must have taken with her, and holding something in her arms. It was a box, black, with silver edges, the kind we used to keep under the bed. I hadn't seen it in over 6 years. It was the box with all our memories. Real ones. Not just receipts and letters like the one I'd left for her. This one had weight. Physical history. It held our wedding program, the dried bouquet she'd saved from the anniversary I spent a month planning, the keys to the first apartment we rented when we were still scraping together cash for groceries. It even had the movie stubs from our second date, folded together inside a note I wrote her the morning after we said I love you for the first time. I watched her walk slowly to the porch and set the box down without knocking. Then she looked at the door. Not like she expected it to open, more like she was saying goodbye to it. She stood there for a minute, arms wrapped around herself, and then she turned and walked back to her car. I didn't open the door until I heard the engine fade down the road. When I finally stepped out, I picked up the box and brought it inside. It was heavier than I remembered. Like the weight of what we were had finally become something literal. I placed it on the living room table and sat across from it, staring at the lid, wondering if I even wanted to look. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside, everything was exactly where we left it years ago, except now, on top of everything, was a new envelope. My name was written in her handwriting, the kind that looped too high on the L and pressed too hard on the R. I opened it. It wasn't an apology. Not in the traditional sense. It was a confession. I fell in love with how it felt to be adored again, not with him. You never stopped loving me, Ellis. I stopped respecting myself. I thought excitement meant more than safety, and I mistook your consistency for indifference. You weren't boring. You were stable. And I sabotaged the only person who ever held space for all my versions, even the worst ones. I know you won't forgive me. I know you probably shouldn't. But if you ever forget what you meant to me, open this box. Every piece inside it is real. Everything outside of it was noise. There were no pleas. No ultimatums. Just those words. I sat there for hours. The sun sank low. The shadows shifted across the carpet. And I just sat. Not because I wanted her back, but because I finally understood why I never would. She didn't cheat because she found someone better. She cheated because she thought she was someone worse. And I couldn't fix that. No one could. The next morning, I mailed the signed divorce papers. Quietly. No message attached. No warning. That night, she texted one last time. I saw the envelope. I didn't reply. Because it was done. Except it wasn't, not completely. One more thing happened that changed everything again. And it didn't come from her. 3 weeks passed. The house had stopped echoing with her absence. At first, I noticed every sound, the silence behind her missing footsteps, the absence of her laughter in the kitchen, the quiet bathroom sink no longer running at 10 p.m. for her nightly skincare ritual. But eventually, those absences became space. Not voids. Just room to breathe. I reorganized everything. Took down our wedding photos. Packed away the anniversary art we commissioned in Asheville. But I didn't burn anything. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. The signed divorce was finalized. Simple. Clean. No contest. One afternoon, I walked into the garage to grab my toolbox and saw the canoe again, the one she always wanted to get rid of. I almost laughed. That old thing had been the cause of at least 3 fights. But instead of selling it like I planned, I started restoring it. Sanded the hull. Repainted it deep blue. Replaced the old oars with handmade ones I carved myself. It was slow, meditative work, the kind that gives your mind a place to rest. That's when I got a text from someone I hadn't heard from in months, Mara. She used to be Haley's coworker. We were never close, but we'd always gotten along. She helped plan Haley's surprise birthday party years ago, and we ended up talking about local food co-ops for an hour while everyone else danced. Her message was simple. Hey, I heard what happened. I'm sorry. I'm also going to pretend I'm texting you because I want to buy a canoe. I grinned. We got coffee a few days later. No pressure. No awkward silences. Just 2 people who knew a little about each other and didn't pretend to know more. She told me she'd left the agency a year ago, got burned out by the branding world. She was working with a local nonprofit now, teaching art therapy to kids. There was a peace in her that I hadn't felt from anyone in a long time. No rush. No performance. Just presence. Over the next few weeks, we texted often. Not in flurries, just enough to keep the air warm. I told her about the canoe. She told me about a kid who painted a chicken riding a skateboard. We laughed. One night, we sat in the finished canoe, parked in the middle of my garage, eating Thai takeout, pretending it was a boat date on Lake Champlain. I didn't know where it was going, but I knew what it wasn't. It wasn't deception. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't pain masquerading as passion. It was real. One evening, as she left, she turned to me and asked, "Are you okay now?" I thought about it. I thought about the towel, the lie, the sting of betrayal, the sound of Haley closing that door behind her. And then I looked around at the clean house, the canoe, the quiet, and at Mara's smile in the soft porch light. And I said, "Yeah, I think I finally am." And I meant it.